The situation in Ukraine reminds us that our freedom isn't free.
I have been very, very direct in saying that NATO members must finally contribute. Germany is just paying a little bit over 1%. We're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting everybody, and yet we're paying a lot of money to protect. Now, this has been going on for decades. This has been brought up by other presidents, but other presidents never did anything about it because I don't think they understood it or they just didn't want to get involved.
NATO's new reality: no more American free rides. US leaders, from Barack Obama to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, have frequently criticized European allies for free riding on American defense contributions. The US has consistently demanded that NATO members take greater responsibility for their defense spending. Trump, in particular, criticized wealthier European nations for failing to meet the 2% GDP target, arguing that the US was unfairly bearing the burden of their security. This stance, though divisive, has spurred some allies to accelerate their defense investments. Despite these complaints, the US has consistently played a central role in NATO. Before 2014, the US contributed 72% of NATO's defense spending, while European members averaged less than 1.5% of GDP, collectively spending $235 billion. This imbalance led to the 2014 NATO Wales Summit pledge for members to target 2% of GDP on defense. By 2024, the US still leads NATO contributions, spending 3.49% of GDP and funding 16% of the common budget. European allies and Canada increased their collective spending to over $430 billion, averaging 2.02% of GDP, showing progress toward burden-sharing goals. However, Trump's approach is differed from other US administrations that prioritized the alliance's collective. Trump treated alliances like a business deal, expecting immediate returns from allies, instead of focusing on the shared, long-term benefits of collective security. Now, Europe once again faces the Trump era's America First foreign policy, bracing for a potential return of that mindset and questioning the future of US commitment to NATO. Remember when Trump called NATO allies delinquent, freeloaders, and suggested letting Russia do whatever the hell they want?
I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
His statement drew widespread condemnation and caused many panicked Europeans to contemplate a world without US protection. It is likely that the US under Trump will no longer be as generous with its support for NATO. This means Europe now has to take care of its own security and defense, without relying on the US for help. Trump's willingness to strain relations. Donald Trump, the self-anointed stable genius, who turned the presidency into a reality show, famously known for his love of winning and Twitter diplomacy. His America First policy. Picture a global game of Monopoly, where trade wars, tariffs, and NATO dues were the play pieces. Allies, just contestants in his geopolitical edition of The Apprentice, complete with "you're fired" diplomacy. From suggesting we nuke hurricanes, to floating the possibility of using disinfectants or light to treat COVID-19, his presidency kept America entertained, confused, and permanently glued to Twitter. In fact, there's nothing he wouldn't hesitate to do. After all, this is the same person who met with the North Korean leader multiple times. Now let's get to the point. Donald Trump openly criticized NATO multiple times during his presidency and continued to do so after leaving office. Throughout his tenure, Trump repeatedly questioned the fairness of US funding for NATO, often describing it as America acting like an ATM for wealthier allies. He frequently claimed that various NATO members had failed to meet their financial obligations, stating they owed the US a tremendous amount of money, or that they owed NATO billions of dollars. Furthermore, If Trump shifts focus to countering China in the Pacific, Europe may face a you're-on-your-own scenario. Trump has shown a willingness to strain relations, exemplified by his recent action to impose a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and Canada, and an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports. Notably, India wasn't included in Trump's initial tariff plans. Trump specifically targeted European allies and Canada for failing to meet NATO's 2% GDP defense spending goal, arguing that the US disproportionately funds its own defense, while subsidizing wealthier allies' security. Trump claimed NATO allies owe the US a lot of money for defense from past years. Truth: there's no record of any countries owing money. NATO doesn't work like a club with yearly fees. Countries promise to spend 2% of their GDP on defense, but not everyone has reached that goal yet. Trump said Germany spends just 1% of its money on defense, while the US spends 4.2%. Truth: Germany actually spends around 1.25% on defense, and the US spends 3.3%, not 4.2%. Trump said the US pays 70 to 90% to protect Europe. Truth: the US does contribute a lot, but the 70-90% figure is misleading. The US does pay for most of NATO's defense, but that includes worldwide military needs, not just Europe. The US pays 22% of NATO's shared costs. Trump said NATO countries promised $40 billion more for defense spending. Truth: the real increase was about $35 billion, and this started before Trump became president in 2016. As of 2024, 23 NATO members, including France, Germany, Poland, and the UK, are on track to meet or exceed the 2% target. This marks a significant improvement from 2014, when only 3 countries met the goal. This reflects how Trump's actions, whether regarding NATO, trade tariffs, or defense spending, have created tensions with various countries. Now, the question is, how strong is a European NATO without the US? Can Europe stand up to Russia without the US? Picture Trump standing at the front of a chaotic classroom of 30-plus NATO allies. He slams a ruler on the desk and says, "If you don't pay, the big, bad beast, that is Russia, will come and eat you all, and don't think, I won't let it happen." Well, let's start by saying this. European NATO members aren't amateurs. They've got some of the best military tech in the world. Britain and France have nuclear weapons, and Germany's conventional forces are among the strongest in NATO, besides the US, of course. If push came to shove, European NATO could absolutely overpower Russia in a full-scale war. But let's not fool ourselves. Russia's nuclear arsenal ensures no one's pushing or shoving anytime soon. Honestly, the US seems more scared of Russia than Europe ever has been. Russia attacking NATO outright, not happening, they're not suicidal. Yet, here we are, with the US lecturing its allies, like they're clueless cousins. Here's the thing, NATO collectively assesses its security needs, establishing reasonable measures like mutual defense plans and adequate spending for safety. Since the 2016 EU Global Strategy, Europe has intensified efforts to strengthen defense, through increased collaboration, such as PESCO, Permanent Structured Cooperation, and the European Defence Fund, EDF, which finance joint research and development. European nations have significantly boosted defense budgets, aligning with NATO goals, while advancing EU-specific initiatives. Emphasis is on building a competitive defense industry, to reduce reliance on external suppliers and ensure security of supply. Member states, coordinated by the European Defence Agency, EDA, are investing in shared projects and technologies to enhance operational readiness and ensure Europe's ability to act independently when needed. However, Trump insists this isn't enough, demanding higher budgets, more advanced systems, and extensive precautions. While NATO sees this as excessive, the US covers the extra costs, and later claims its efforts are the sole reason for NATO's survival. This reflects the US's outsized defense spending, and its expectation that NATO allies should match its level of investment. Or the underlying reason could be something else. The US has positioned itself as the global protector. After all, who else would step in when countries, like Ukraine or those in the Middle East, so desperately needed saving? And who knew there were so many other countries just waiting for the US to come to the rescue, with a few $1 billion and a couple of military interventions? Jokes aside, Europe today faces a range of complex threats, including terrorism, cyber attacks, rising inflation, energy crises, and trade disruptions. These challenges have been made worse by global events like the COVID-19 pandemic, increasingly severe weather events such as floods and droughts, migration pressures, and, of course, the war in Ukraine, a delightful parting gift from Washington's geopolitical games. The US military is designed for large-scale warfare, like World War III scenarios, massive carriers, tanks, and big explosions. But modern threats, like terrorism, migration pressures, or cyber warfare, you can't exactly nuke a hacker or bomb rising energy bills. Yet Washington insists, spend more on defense, or Russia will get you. One might wonder what Europe's future holds under Trump's America First policies.